Good morning, good afternoon. Thank you all for joining us. But without further ado, let's dig into the 2018 Louise. So Véronique, maybe it makes sense just to go chronologically and let's talk about the 2018 growing season.
Yes, with pleasure, and good evening, everyone. 2018 growing season was very similar. I have to say the last couple of vintages have been not in all directions. They resemble each other. 2018 started in 2019 because for us it starts in the winter time. We had interesting because we had a warm months of December, then a cold months of January, and then again warm months. So it was an alternance of warm and cold. The good news was also we did get some rain in the spring, which was very, very good for the vines because there was some moisture in the soil. Because then, as we all know, the summer was not cold. The summer was warm with some drought. But the thing is, we didn't get too many heat spikes. We didn't get this time where sometimes we get sunburn and all of that, which we have seen in Burgundy happening lately quite a lot. Haven't seen that in Oregon, but yet it was still a warm year. The harvest started on September 22nd, which is not that early. We've seen much earlier vintages. So I would say kind of a normal thing. The beauty was at the end, we still had these warm days, but cool nights. And that is one secret that we don't control, but it is one secret for development of complexity in wine. So it started great. A good growing season. Yes, some stress with the lack of water, but in the end we did get some. And maybe something important to notice is at DVO, the vines are getting old and the roots means they are deep. And so they are much more resistant to some weather problems, including the drought, because they can go and get the water. I mean, they do find the water, which is there. So we started with very beautiful grapes, very healthy grapes. And of course, in the life of winemaker, that is great.
You can't ask for anything more.
Yes.
So as you're deciding which blocks of fruit to pick, are there particular parcels on the estate that you know are going to go into Louise, or at what point?
Kind of, yes. Now I do. Before, no. If we go back in time, 1999 was the first vintage. And that was just in the cellar, tasting all the wines. And we do have year in, year out about 45 different cuvées, but tasting each of them every month, making tasting notes, you quickly realize that some of them stand out. They just have something very special. And so back in 1999, going through all those wines, we noticed some of those cuvées we liked, and going through the months during the year of élevage, keeping our little tasting notes, we made our selection. But as the years go, I would say the decades went by, we did the same, but we noticed when we finally say, okay, this is going to be the blend for Louise, where did it come from on the estate? And we did notice that consistently, some of, I would say 5 to 6 blocks consistently made, not necessarily every year, made it to Cuvée Louise. So I have to admit that when we start harvest, I make sure that I keep a fermenter that is adapted to the size of that block, because I know potentially it can be a Cuvée Louise. So it's fun because we started from not knowing, but now we are nailing down to our favorite little places for Louise.
And when you're going through during the fermentation process, well, actually, I think I should back up. There was one question. Some of our members are curious if we use any whole cluster for the fermentations.
I did in 2018, not necessarily every year. I would say the rule is if it's a cold vintage or late ripening vintage, then I'm careful because the stems are not necessarily ripe, because it's not just the fruit that gets ripe, but the stem do get ripe. And the way they do it's not the built-in sugar, but they mature with the phenolic, right? What we call phenolic ripeness, meaning like if you would take it and chew it, if they're not ripe, they taste bitter and a bit green and vegetal. That you don't like. But if it tastes kind of woody, like if you chew the stick of an apple, and then you have nothing special coming out, then you know it could be interesting. So in 2018, yes, I did not every fermenter, got some, so it's really by sight, you look at the fruit. And so I did include, normally it's around, I don't go too high, but 20 to 30% whole cluster. it is really a very interesting tool for the future of the wine. Maybe when the wine is very young, it stands out a little bit. So that's why you have to be a bit careful with how much you use, and then how much you will work with the fruit. But on the midterm or long term, this is a very interesting flavor that develops very gracefully into wine, into something spicy and rose related flavors. We have the experience in Burgundy, and there was no reason it couldn't work in Oregon. So yes, you know, try to use the pasta.
No, yeah, I know it doesn't happen very often. And as you're going through and you're tasting the 45 different fermenters, and some of them speak to you and say, this might be the Louise Cuvée, or this might become the Lorraine Cuvée, is there anything different in the process for how you treat the wines to ensure that they...
Not during the winemaking. Actually, the winemaking, I don't even think of it. I just make the wine the way I think it's best with the fruit I have. So in 2018, for example, we noticed quickly, because the summer was warm, the grapes had fairly thick skins. We know the tannins would come easily. So I was quite careful not to punch down too much, not to overwork the fruit, because we could see the color and the texture coming. For Louise, I keep in mind, because there's something we try to achieve. It's a wine that is very delicate. So if I do see one fermenter that I know of good origin fruit is already showing, then I will really be careful. But honestly, during the winemaking process, I'm really focusing on what the wine is, how it's developing, and that guides me to my daily decision.
And so as the wine evolves in barrel and you're tasting each month as we send the samples to you, how do you hone in on which barrels become Louise?
The ultimate decision, really the key for Cuvée Louise, what I'm looking for, or what we are looking for, is this level of refinement, of finesse, of elegance that you should get with Pinot, but at a different level. A Pinot Noir is always sort of refined and delicate and soft and elegant. I mean, sometimes, some years you have more structure, and sometimes you can work for it a little bit more, but really for Louise, this is what I look for. This is my goal. So in the cellar, that is what I'm going to try and focus or select to make the final Cuvée Louise, which is not decided early on. It's decided at the end of the élevage. So it takes about 12 months to make the final decision for Cuvée Louise.
So with the Louise, you're looking more for barrels that have structure. So how would you decide your process when tasting all of the barrels? What are you looking for in Lorraine? What are you looking for in Classique? What really defines the distinction and the personalities for each of those wines and the Edition Limitée?
Yes, for Louise, I am not looking for wine that has more structure. It is more for Cuvée Lorraine. So that would be the difference. For Louise, it needs to have some structure, because I want the wine to have aging potential. But I want this level on top of the structure is, for me, the level of refinement. So if the wine doesn't have too much structure, I don't mind. I don't really look for that. For Cuvée Lorraine, yes, I'm looking for a bit more structure, a more Gevrey-Chambertin type of wine with, you know, nice plenitude, ampleness, and yes, some sort of a structure. I mean, our wines are never really tannic, but for Louise, the selection of the barrels will be really based on the length of the wine. Is the wine very long and very complex? And those that shows the most complexity, the most refinement, will be selected for Louise. But in the end, it's just a few barrels. So it's very easy. It's not like you're taking too much out of a potentially really lovely Cuvée Lorraine. And so it's it's actually quite a fun exercise to do.
Yeah, I mean, with all of the options, how do you decide how many barrels to select for Louise?
Year in, year out. So I mean, we can go from 3 barrels, which was originally what we did. In 2013, we only made 5, because we know that it's a vintage that we had a lot of issues with the rain. And so the maximum is 18 to 20 barrels. If it's a very good vintage, we know we can, from the 800 barrels we have in the cellar, taking 20 of the best is fine. So it will be anywhere from 5, let's say, to 20 barrels.
And of the barrels for Louise, typically, how much new oak is the wine seeing?
Because the wine goes to the barrel soon after it is being made, so after 2 or 3 weeks, and I don't know which one is going to be Louise. I have some ideas because I take notes during the fermentation. I have the same regime, I would say, for all of them. So every lot will get between 20 to 25% of new oak. So Louise is really the same. So I'm not putting more new oak for the Louise, but maybe at the end, if I select a cuvée, it is 25% versus the classic, which might be 20%. So I'm not going, too strong with new oak. It doesn't need to have that much new oak.
And that's about how much new oak you're using in Burgundy as well, right?
It is the same, I would say. This would be the level for Premier Cru. For Grand Cru, we can go to 30%. But yes, you're right. I mean, the other barrels are not really old. They're usually the oldest would be 5 years old. So even a 1-year-old barrel can have an impact. So the idea is the wine will get through this breathing process, which is very interesting for the wine. But of course, we know the wine is taking something from the oak, which is those lovely flavors. So even if a 1-year-old barrel will have some impact on the wine. So you have to balance that out.
And I know that you've often compared our Dundee Hills wines to the appellation of Chambord-Musigny, but I wonder, as you're making your blending selections, is there a particular appellation or bottling from Burgundy that you think of specifically when talking about Louise?
Absolutely. For me, no question, it will be from Chambord-Musigny because I think it is the closest. It is. We are not remaking Chambord with Louise, but it's kind of a big inspiration. And I would say Chambord-Musigny Les Amoureuses. I adore that vineyard, and I think there's some similarity between both. I've always seen that. Some vintages may be less, like 1999, even though in Burgundy, actually 99 was also a fairly structured vintage. But yes, Les Amoureuses. I'm not saying Musigny, which is the Grand Cru. Amoureuse is a very, very good Premier Cru. I'm not too sure why. I just think because both wines for me are talking about beauty and refinement and elegance and aging potential with grace and so on.
And as far as the 2018 vintage is concerned in Oregon, how would you compare it to other vintages in Burgundy? Which vintage does it remind you of?
2018 in Burgundy, a lot of good vintages. If I go back in time, I would say 2016 in the recent vintages, because both 16 in Burgundy and 18 in Oregon have this really deep and focused and balanced wines, but they're not big wines, but they're very graceful with depth. 17 would be more light and delicate in Burgundy, so I wouldn't compare those two, but 16 in the recent years. But then if you go back in time, I would also probably go to 2009, because 2009 was also generous. We made wine in 2018. It was not really short vintage. And in Burgundy, it was the same. So a warm year with good production, but yet good concentration. So certainly compared to some not vintages like 05 or 15 that are more structured. That wouldn't be too much my comparison. Yeah.
And returning to Oregon, how would you compare the 2018 vintage Louise to 2016 and 2017 blends?
Well, as I said before, they're all in the same style of vintages. They all come from warm years that were easy growing, very healthy fruits, similar type of winemaking, similar choice of a whole cluster. So it's not huge difference. Not like in Burgundy 17 is it's quite more delicate, I think. So yeah, I wouldn't say there's enormous difference between these three vintages. Sorry,
and
maybe you finally.
it's the truth. And from the 90s and the early 2000s, is there a vintage that reminds you of 2018?
Yes, I would say 19. If we go back in time, I would say 1994 So yes, why? Because I was thinking about vintages in 2018. It's always a fun exercise to do. And 1994, in our short history of DDO back then, was the first warm year, and we thought, gee, ooh, how is that going to be? And those wines were delicious, and they aged very well. So if I go back in time, I would say yes, 18. It's not the only one, but 18 resembled that. Then we got 1998. But 98 was very good, but very small. So maybe a bit more structure in 98. And then if we keep going in time, I have a vintage that I adore is 2012. And I think there's similarities in those vintages too. And in the 200, the 2000 vintages, 2002, probably 2002. Yes. Yeah. So, yeah, so there's some to refer to.
2018 is in really good company in Burgundy and Oregon.
Yes.
The 94, we opened that maybe a couple of years ago, maybe it's been 3 now for the 30th anniversary, and it was still drinking beautifully. I know a lot of our members are curious about how ageable 2018 is specifically. In fact, Randy Strand, one of our members, is giving his allocation of Louise to his daughter as a wedding gift this year. So he really wants to know how long he should tell her to age it for.
Well, she's very lucky. That's a beautiful gift. And I would say her children probably will be able to taste the Louise. If you had asked me the question 20 years ago, I would say, I don't know. But now with that, we have this history of Louise starting in 1999, and we can line them all up and they're all drinking great. And to me, the wine should be delicious all the time. But for sure, you drink them. If you drink it now, it's fine. But drinking the wine, you can see it has potential. And certainly 2018 is among those vintages that have a good age because they have great balance. They have good acidity, despite the fact that we had this warm weather. The acidity is good in 2018. So I like wines that are mature, not when they are dead, but I would say 15 to 20 years should be no problem if the wine is kept in good condition. If the corks have no issues with being too dry or a little butterfly come and lay eggs, that could be something to watch. It should be a wine that ages very well. But again, no problem to drink it, over the next 10, 15, and probably 20 years.
So one of our members, Bruce, he wants to know if you were to pick one year in the future when to drink the 2018, so rather than the range, when would it be ideal at its finest moment?
I would so one type of wine, I would say I like them young and I like them mature. So if I'm not going to drink them now, I would say I would wait for the 2018. I would wait 10 years. So let's say now it's 2021, 2031.
All right, 2031, mark it on your calendars.
But something important, Ashley, if you want to keep any wine, but it's very true with Louise, you have to consider the size. Because of course, a Magnum will age longer than a bottle, and a Jeroboam will age even longer. So I know here my dad was very nice and smart also to lay down some big formats. And now it's a joy that we can go back to wines that are 30 years, 40 years old. And yes, they haven't moved from the cellar, but even if they are kept in any good cellar, they will age as well. And it's so fantastic to be able to refer to the past and you think of what was happening that year. Maybe you were born that vintage, maybe your children were born, maybe you got married, whatever. And so I think for people who want to lay down for them or for their children or grandchildren, you have to think about those bigger sizes because it really makes a big difference on the potential of aging.
We always like to bring magnums to parties. Well, when we connect again, yeah, you're always the hit of the event. But a couple of our members are also curious about, has your approach to blending the Louise changed since the first vintage in 1999?
No, the approach to blending Louise has not changed, but we have to adapt to the changes. I'm explaining that we see there is a global warming we can't deny. We pick still compared to Burgundy late in the season, but sooner than it used to be. So we do have to adapt in the vineyards with the canopy management, with the yields, with what we do at the winery, with less extraction on the fruit. So the goal is the same, the approach is the same, the thinking behind the essential things that you're looking for, the complexity, the elegance, are the same. But the way to achieve that, yes, we have to adapt to more higher alcohol. So all these things we like. So it doesn't change the style of the wine. We do have to adapt to the changes of nature, viticulture. And also, I spoke about that earlier. The vines have grown. The vines have gotten older, and a 30-year-old vine is certainly not giving you the same fruit as a 2-year-old or 3-year-old, which is the first year they start to produce vineyards. They build energy. They build things that you will give to the fruit, and they don't care so much about a big rain or big drought or big frost. And so that is also certainly included in the fact that we still look for the same approach to the wine, but there will be some things that we will play that are different than they were 20 years ago. And the vintages, of course, vintages matter. I really love that we have to respect the vintage. It's fun. Every year is different. And so we may prefer 18 to 17, or maybe we would prefer 19 to 18. So it's a fantastic vintage. I really adore the 19s. And that's fun. That's fun. Yeah.
Yeah, and also when you open the wine, how they're tasting and who you're with, the memories you're creating, that
yes.
changes.
And I saw the word, that I can't see the questions, but I did see the word Coravin pop up. And I would say this is it's a tool I really love. My husband would say, why do we need a Coravin? We open the bottle and we drink it. But sometimes you're not with a large group, or you're not necessarily going to finish the bottle. And I think it's a great way to try the wine and decide, I like it now, I'm going to keep it. Or if you want to just have a little glass with your husband or your wife on an evening. So it's definitely a device that I use a lot personally, because sometimes you want to drink Italian, then it's Spanish, then it's from Burgundy, and it's from Oregon, and
it gives you more flexibility.
Yes.
All right, let's see. I see that there's some questions coming through in chat. Let's see. It looks like Heidi's curious about how many new blocks have been added since we first started planting. So we started in 1988 with the 2 parcels, and now we have 45, I guess.
I don't know. I know I have 45 fermenters, but sometimes in a fermenter I can blend, because I don't have one fermenter per block. Some are small, some are bigger. We haven't added many. There's one block that Philippe, my brother, he pulled out. He was not so happy with we were not so happy with the wines that we were making year after year. So we thought we can make better wines with these new clones that we now have worked with. And it's a key element to the quality of wine. It's not only the soil. The soil, of course, is crucial, is very important. As we know, the terroir is very important, but not only. We have to think of the rootstock and the part that will produce the fruit and eventually give you the wine. And it's a very slow learning process. So now Philippe does have a good experience. And so we talk a lot, and we connect what he does in the vineyard to what we produce and the quality of the final wine. And that is a slow process. So when he plants a new block, it will be with something that he thinks is a very good combination of a particular rootstock to a particular clone. But we do see differences on the estate, but there's not that much more to be planted. A little bit more. But now I told him stop planting, because I am at full capacity at the winery. We don't have enough space to do more. So I'm really happy with what we have, the size we have, and knowing each block very well is great.
All right, so I have a question that's not exactly related to winemaking, but it's family. So with Lorraine and Louise, do you ever, the girls, do you ever have them taste the wines at the house at dinner? And is there any competition amongst them?
Not so often with Louise, because she's not in bone, but with Lorraine, yes. She actually now participates to our daily tasting. So most of our tasting are done on Monday and Tuesday, and we get the wines, specifically with the COVID, we get the wines. We always have done that because I'm not in Oregon all the time, and neither is Lorraine. So we get the wines, and yesterday we had the samples and we tasted together all the samples, and it's a really, really nice thing to do because she has a great palate. That kid, when she was young, I don't think she was thinking she would join the business because it's usually, as always, I'm not going to do what my parents are doing. But I could tell she had some abilities to smell when she was a little one, and then when she started to taste, she has really good palate, and then she just found her own path and liked it very much. When the kids are together, we make it as fun to have them try their wine. So last time, it's not so often I have the three of them. And so I said, okay, we take one bottle of Arthur, one bottle of Louise, and one bottle of Lorraine. But of course, always they say, oh, mine is much better than yours. And so it's not really competition, but it's a friendly competition.
friendly banter. It's always helpful.
Yes.
Keeps it entertaining, especially with the wine. All right. And let's see. Caitlin, are we missing any other questions?
Oh, I see Margaret is talking about my mother.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she's she's great. She's hoping she can come back to Oregon next this vintage 2021. I hope. She's really great, but I make sure she tastes the wine because she's been working hard all these years, and when we take an older DDO, always make sure she tries it because she had a big I would say her hands were important in making, and her laughs and her kindness, and and she's funny. She had to get an eye surgery recently, so she couldn't drink wine for one day, and I took her for the eye surgery, which was something she was so stressed about that, but it was very minimal. It's cataract, and so when I picked her up, she said, oh, the best thing about today is tonight I can drink a glass of wine.
A true Burgundian.
Yeah. And she's very resistant to it. She said, last time I was in the hospital was in 1968. That was when my brother, Frederick, was born. I said, Mom, you're in really good shape. It's probably that glass of red wine every day she takes.
Should keep that recipe at hand.
Yes.
All right. Well, I think we're nearing the end of today's call. And I think we covered everyone's questions. I don't see anything else popping up in chat. So we definitely will schedule another one of these in the future. We have the first day of spring coming up, thankfully, in just a couple of weeks. And with that, we will release our rosé. But we'll definitely send a note out with a link to today's recording, and then also let you know when we have the next call scheduled. But thank you, Veronique, for your time. I know it's evening dinner time now. You must be getting hungry.
Oh, no, I'm okay. And I say hello to Lon. I saw he put a little note, so go ahead.
Excellent.
No, it's
All
great.
right. Well, thank you so much, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your day and evening, whatever time you're in. And merci, Veronique.
À bientôt.